So we've been looking at using Venn diagrams to analyze arguments. I want to shift gears a little bit and still analyze some arguments, but go back to logic rules we dealt with earlier in the chapter. So logic rules related to and or, when and statements are true or false, and when or statements are true or false. So those are the two we're going to look at here. So first example, let's say we have the premise that Jen is getting married or Elena is moving. Okay, let's just think about that or statement. We know that or statements are true when either we have two true statements or we have a true statement and a false statement in that orientation, or a false statement and a true statement. So this premise is going to be true if any of those situations hold true. Well, let's look at what premise 2 says. Premise 2 says Elena is not moving. Okay, if Elena is not moving, that means the situation has to be this one right here. Because remember, the original premise said that Elena is moving. If Elena is not moving, that means that second part of the or statement is false. So if that second part of the or statement is false, that means that Jen must be getting married. Well, let's look at the conclusion that was given. Jen must be getting married. That's absolutely true. That has to be the case, because this is the only thing that could be happening and still have a true premise, is if we have the first statement being true. So this is a valid conclusion. Now, if that conclusion, so I'm going to do a what if my conclusion had said Jen is not getting married, then that would actually be invalid. Because remember, the idea is that because we know in premise 2 that Elena is not moving, then we are forced for the first premise to actually hold true, for the first statement, which is Jen is getting married, has to be true. And the conclusion that Jen is not getting married would not work. We would not be able to say this. So this would be an invalid argument if I had actually said that the conclusion was that Jen is not getting married. So instead of drawing a picture here, we're thinking about what's happening in terms of of when an or statement could possibly work. When could it be true? So we're using our logic rules for or to analyze this argument. Let's look at the second example on this slide. Premise 1, Amina got a job and Nathan got a raise. All right. So when we think about this statement, we've got an and. There's only one situation where you could have a true statement with an and. The only way that and is true, only when you have a true statement and another true statement. This is the only way this can be true. Well, let's look at premise 2. It says Nathan did not get a raise. If Nathan did not get a raise, that means this is false. Okay? So automatically, that means we have to have a false statement. Therefore, Amina didn't get a job. We don't know. Okay? It could be that Amina didn't get a job, or it could be that Amina got a job. We just don't know. We know that we can't make the judgment because this second premise basically undoes what the first premise said. These two premises don't go together because the first premise says that both statements must be true, and the second premise is saying, well, one of them isn't. So when it comes to drawing a conclusion that Amina didn't get the job, we can't know for sure because we have two premises that don't work together. So this would be an invalid argument. So a valid argument is when you have a conclusion that must follow from the premises that were given. An invalid conclusion is one where you can't tell for sure. You just don't know what's happening based on the original two premise. So an invalid argument doesn't necessarily mean that something is false. It just means we can't tell for sure.